So, Charles, walk me through all of the risks of long-term sun exposure during spring break.
That's such a great question, Jaina. And I think that I'd actually like to start by really thanking you for this opportunity. And I think it's important to talk about this topic. 1 in 5 Americans during their lifetime develop skin cancer. And you think about kind of the long-term impacts of it, and especially like cumulative sun exposure. But during a week like spring break, a single sunburn uh, more than doubles your risk of melanoma, which is the deadliest form of skin cancer. So I think that it's important to have fun on spring break, but to understand that that you can have fun safely and that the decisions you make this week can impact you in the long run.
All righty. Um, Let me ask you this. For the average, let's say, college student who's going out to the islands, in particular of just tanning and relaxing, what's your biggest word of advice to that crowd of people?
Yeah, so I'm really familiar with that crowd of people. I practice in Daytona Beach. I grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida. So spring break is like our Super Bowl. So we understand, I think, the spring break vibe and the spring break crowd. I'd say that being out in the sun is part of the joy of spring break. And you can still do that, but I think it's important to do it smartly. So there's a few uh, tips and tricks that I offer to people. The first thing is that sun protection is important. And specifically, I talk about really a couple ways to mitigate or to reduce sun exposure. The first is to seek shade. So being out in the sun is great, but having a large umbrella that kind of gives you shade, and especially the rays that are the most harmful for you are strongest during the periods of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So avoiding sun during that time or seeking shade during that time is really helpful. I also recommend slipping on sun protective clothing. So clothing that's kind of lightweight, but it also protects against the sun. Sliding on sunglasses. A lot of people don't realize that their risk for uveal melanoma, which is a form of eye cancer, is increased with sun exposure, and sunglasses reduce that risk. I also recommend wearing a wide brimmed hat. That's very important. And then finally, slopping on sunscreen. So I like to recommend that people should wear a broad spectrum, water resistant, 30 SPF or higher sunscreen. They should apply it before they go out. They should apply it every 2 hours or more frequently if they're sweating or in the water. And so those are my major forms of advice.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned sunscreen. Is there a difference between sunscreen and sunblock?
No functional difference. That's a really interesting question, Jana. There really isn't that significant of a functional difference, but there is two different types of sunscreen that a lot of people kind of make the distinction between. So there are chemical sunscreens and there are mineral sunscreens. And they are both wonderful and they're both safe and they're both great at protecting against the sun, but they both act a little bit different. Chemical sunscreens, they absorb the UV rays and disperse them a little bit. Mineral sunscreens, which have zinc oxide or titanium dioxide in them, they tend to block the sun rays. So they tend to almost kind of reflect the sun's rays. Functionally, there's no difference between the two, but sometimes whenever we're talking about them, we have kind of sunblock being mineral sunscreens and sunscreen being chemical sunscreens. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Um, Now walk me through, we've talked about sunscreen, sunblock, chemical, mineral. What about like the tanning oils or like the tanning balms that we see people use during the spring breaks period?
Sure. I don't think that I have like a really strong or functional stance on tanning balms or the tanning oils. But what I'll tell you in one of the things that I really like to talk to people about is that I think that sunscreens, sunblocks, tanning oils, they're almost always applied wrong, Jana. Everybody, and I fall into this category. So whenever you look at a bottle and it says SPF 30 or SPF 45 or SPF 70, that is if you apply that sunscreen or that sun balm the way that it was tested to be applied, which is if this is the way that they test it. So you need an ounce or a shot glass full of sunscreen for your whole body, right? Which is a lot of sunscreen if you think about it. Most people don't apply it that way. Most people don't apply it every 2 hours, and most people don't apply it whenever they get out of the pool or out of the water. And so what you're getting when you're applying an SPF 30 or an SPF 45 is you're actually probably getting at best half of that SPF if you're not applying it properly. So there's a couple tips and tricks that I really like. So I mentioned the shot glass. So at spring break, alcohol is a common thing that people drink. So I say before you take your shot glass of alcohol, take your shot glass of sunscreen and put it on your body. If you don't have a shot glass, I have the 3-finger rule. So applying sunscreen, a line on each of your 3 fingers covers the most common sun exposed areas, which is your face, your ears, your neck, and the back of your hands. So I think that that's the first thing, is applying it enough is a really important thing. And then I also think that a lot of people, I do surgeries every single day. I'm a Mohs surgeon here in town, and I do surgeries every single day on areas that people forget to put sunscreen on. A lot of people take sunscreen, they put it all over their face, but there are some really common areas that they miss that I think are really important to hit. So the ears is one, the back of the hands is one, the lips is another one. The tops or the bottom, or like the dorsum, or kind of the tops of the feet, is another one. The scalp, if you have thinning hair, even if you don't have thinning hair, I do so many surgeries on the scalp, and people don't recognize that putting sunscreen in that area is really important. So it's not only applying these things, but it's applying them in the proper volume, applying them correctly, and applying them in the proper areas that I think are really important to remember.
Yeah, that's all great. You never really think about the scalp too much, especially if you don't have that thinning hair, so that's important to note.
Exactly.
So I'll give you a little bit of info on me. I'm 20. So as an average 20-year-old, I am on TikTok a lot. And what I've started to see are people who go out to tan or they go out in the sun and all of a sudden their face starts to swell and swell and swell. What is that? And then what are the risks that they should be looking out for, or the signs that they should be looking out for?
Gina, that's a really interesting question. The first thing is I think that you're not alone in looking to TikTok or social media for healthcare trends. I just did a talk for the American Academy of Dermatology about dermatology and skincare and social media. And I think it's really interesting to know that we officially crossed the threshold. So more than half of people turn to social media for healthcare advice that they follow through on than any other platform. So people go to TikTok and Instagram before they go to Google or before they go to search engines. They go there before they go to physicians or family members or healthcare websites. And so I think it's important for us as dermatologists to understand the trends that are out there. That said, it's tough for me to speak specifically to the idea of facial swelling or a medical condition that happens after sun exposure without having, a chance to really thoroughly vet and see the videos. Everything that I personally look at on TikTok or Instagram, I look at through a very particular lens, and I always try to kind of flavor it with well-vetted resources and well-vetted materials from the American Academy of Dermatology. I'm a pediatrician, so also the American Academy of Pediatrics has some great resources. But I'll tell you, there are some significant adverse effects that can happen with profound sun exposure. It's not just redness, and it's not just pain that you experience. Burns, the skin is, there's multiple layers to the skin. And whenever you get a burn, there is a superficial redness component to it, or there's a superficial part to it. And there's a deep part where you can actually get swelling underneath the skin. So most sunburns, especially if you get a significant sunburn that gets to the point where we're talking about blistering or pre-blistering, you can see swelling underneath the skin that can actually cause layers of separation from the skin. So without seeing like the specific, videos that you're referencing, I think that it's important to know that sunburns can lead to swelling. And if you have a really bad sunburn on your face, you can get significant swelling. There's also medical conditions that are associated with the medical term that I'm looking for is called solar urticaria, where wavelengths of sunlight actually cause an allergic reaction or allergic type reaction in people's skin that can look like significant swelling or angioedema or red whelps that are swelling under the skin. So it's possible the videos that you're talking about or referencing are kind of a specific medical condition called solar urticaria, but it also could be just a really bad sunburn that has deep swelling under the skin. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Go ahead and spell the solar urticaria for me, just so I have it right here.
Sure. Solar.
Hmm.
And then the next word is Urticaria. There's also a couple really fun, Jana, just to kind of like sidebar. I know I'm probably not supposed to do that on news stories, but there are a couple really interesting rashes that come out during spring break that are very unique to high intermittent periods of sun exposure. So there's one that you can see where it's called juvenile spring eruption. So you see young kids that have been holed up in their little hidey holes all winter, protecting their skin from the sun because they've been inside, and they come out and they just get this blast of ultraviolet radiation. And what you can see is blisters along the tops of the ears, and you can actually see kind of blisters along the face and on the back of the hands. And that's related to this high octane exposure after low exposure for an extended period of time. And so that's one that we see commonly as a pediatrician. I would see that in teenagers as they would go out for spring break. This would be a really common rash that we would see. It's not dangerous. It's uncomfortable. Seeing your board certified dermatologist can help because we tend to recommend there's some antihistamines that we can use, some topical corticosteroids that we can use. But then also, if we know that it's happening and it happens in like a more severe fashion, we can prep people by doing what's calling the UV hardening effect, where we can actually expose you to low levels of light to kind of prepare your skin for spring break. That's a really interesting one, juvenile spring eruption. Another fun one, Jana, is phytophotodermatitis, or what many people call margarita dermatitis. Have you heard of margarita dermatitis?
I have not. That's a fun name, though.
Very fun name. So margarita dermatitis is a phenomenon that happens all the time in spring break. A lot of people call it your corona dermatitis. So basically, citrus fruits so lemon, lime, grapefruit. There are some other foods that do it, like celery and parsnip. They have a chemical in there that when it gets exposed to the sun and it's on your skin, it can lead to a blistering, really itchy rash that it's called phytophotodermatitis. So you think about, you go out, you get your margarita, you have your lemon and your lime, it splashes on your skin. If you get significant sun exposure or UVA exposure on that skin that has that chemical in it, it can blister. And not only does it blister it doesn't blister right then, it blisters probably 24 to 48 hours later. And then you can get this hyperpigmentation or darkening of your skin. It looks almost like streaks kind of on your hands or on your legs or on your chest, wherever the citrus exposure is. And that darkening can last for weeks. And can be pretty distressing to a lot of different people. So we see it all the time around spring break. I actually saw it in kids, in families that would have citrus trees that would start to bloom around spring. They get it around their mouth and things like that. So phytophotodermatitis is another one that we as dermatologists can help with. So I think that there's a lot of unique skin things that happen during spring break. It's not just sun protection that we need to talk about, but it's also there's a few unique rashes that you need to be on the lookout for.
Wow, look at that. Who would have known that eating fruits would would do that to you? It's
I
like,
know, and I want to just like stress, this is not an allergy to lemons or limes. You do not have an allergy if you get this. This is a very unique reaction that happens when the juices or the chemicals are called furocoumarins within the lemons and the lime and the citrus fruits on your skin react with the sun. So it's not an allergy.
okay. And now if someone watches this, someone reads this, and they get the lime juice, they get the lemon juice on their hand, their chest, wherever you said, what's your recommendation? What's their next step?
Perfect. I'm so glad you asked that, Jana. I couldn't have asked a better next question. So my recommendation is, first of all, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think I said that right. So the idea is knowing and being educated about this condition can keep you aware whenever you're around citrus fruits or lemons and limes and you have high octane sun exposure. To be aware that whenever, if you get lemon juice or lime juice that like kind of gets, that kind of falls on you, gets sprayed on you, wash it off immediately. So definitely make sure you wash it off as quickly as you can. The second thing is kind of going back to point A at the very beginning of our talk. Applying sunscreen to areas where you actually have lemon juice or lime juice that gets exposed, it prevents this from happening, right? Because, like I mentioned, the furocumulins plus your skin plus the sun all create the rash. So if you actually have like a sun protective um, barrier on there, then you don't actually get this. And then the third thing is sometimes people aren't always in the best state of mind whenever they're consuming margaritas, so they might not remember those things. And that's okay. If you do get this rash, though, I recommend seeing a board certified dermatologist. There's several things that we can provide to help with alleviating symptoms, reducing the darkening that you can see, and helping that darkening go away quicker.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Last little question I have for you. Folks are done for the day in the sun, they're getting ready for dinner. What is your thought or your recommendation in regard to after sun care? So aloe vera, aloe gels, anything like that.
I love that you asked that because I think that I think so my kids, I put the fear of God in them about sunburns. And so I'm going to be a little vulnerable with you, Jana. My son got a sunburn the other day, and it was like the end of the world for him. He was like so scared and so terrified, and I realized sometimes, you know what? It's okay if it happens. We'll help you navigate it. We'll get through this together. So there's a few things that you can do to reduce the severity of sunburns after you get sun exposure. The first thing is cooling down your skin. So ice packs, cool showers after being out in the sun is a really good idea. The second thing is I actually really like aloe or soy containing moisturizers, especially after a shower. So while your skin is still damp, applying those moisturizers to your skin can not only have a soothing effect, it has an anti-inflammatory effect as well that can reduce the severity of a sunburn. Speaking of anti-inflammatories, not many people think about this, but actually taking Motrin or taking ibuprofen or aspirin after sun exposure can help reduce the severity of a sunburn. And then whenever you have a sunburn, the blood vessels to your skin are very dilated, and it's really common. Not a lot of people recognize that you're losing moisture very quickly. And so drinking a lot of water has been shown to really help with after sun exposure with reducing the severity of sunburn. So those are kind of my 4 tips and tricks that I recommend.